if they don't mention any of these things and they just give you this number, like, we benchmark you, and if you adopt this lean model, you can save all this money. Run. It's not about the tools. It is not about some fancy control board or some control chart. It's not about Andon or Kanban cards or A3s or any of these other lean tools or the money. It's putting people at the center of everything.
Hello and welcome back once again to the Inquisitor podcast with me, Marcus Cauchi. Today my guest is Matt Gaskin. Matt is a consultant in the area of lean. We're going to discuss what lean is, what it isn't, but most importantly, we're going to look at why transformation programs fail and what you do in order to cause them to fail. So, Matt, without any further ado, over to you.
My name is Matt Gaskin. I'm going to start with what I'm not, because I've got serious imposter syndrome being on your podcast, Marcus. I'm not a business owner. I'm not a sales leader, a Toyota consultant, or anything like that. I've never worked for Toyota. I'm just a guy from middle management who's worked in 5 large companies from the US to the UK. You can see here on my LinkedIn profile. Who's also taken an interest in reducing waste. Frankly, probably because I'm a little bit lazy. I don't like repetitive, boring tasks myself, and I hate seeing other people hating their lives as they're struggling to do those repetitive, boring tasks. I don't like jobs where it feels like you're dropping a few points as you do them. I've had an interest in lean and the Japanese way of doing things from university, and a year I spent whilst I was there working in a Japanese manufacturer. I've since had the fortune and misfortune of seeing continuous improvement or lean agile or whatever you want to call it being done very, very badly in the trenches. So yeah, I'm now a lean consultant working independently. Okay. And that's what I'm at. I hope your listeners, whether they're in a lean or a lean agile transformation, or if they're just thinking about it, gain some useful insights and some tips as to where the whole lean idea came from.
I'm personally more interested in how you can apply lean agile within the context of a selling environment, and how you can use the application of intelligently lazy design in order to achieve the optimal outcome. Mm-hmm. I've just spent the last 4 years reverse engineering out all the acts of idiocy and self-sabotage that I've been guilty of for the last 35 years. And what I've come to realize is that by adopting the strategies we're going to be talking about, it is absolutely possible for anybody who chooses to intentionally create the better future that they want by design, if they are willing to do it iteratively and with patience, and apply some intelligence instead of brawn and grit. I'm not a big fan of resilience. I think it's very overrated. I would much rather find the way of not doing something in order to make the outcome happen. So let's talk about that. Intelligently lazy by design.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've mentioned a few things there that really, really resonate. Organizational resilience comes from being a learning organization that can adapt. And when I say that, I'm a little bit lazy, I mean, that's certainly one of my advices, but don't think for a second that if you go down the route of lean, that you're going to have an easy time of it. It's really, really hard work. But before we go any further, we should define what lean is. Please. And what it isn't, because you will hear the term lean agile, which is normally used in software development, lean Six Sigma, even going into specific industries like lean healthcare, lean construction, lean finance, even lean government. There's an idea. So what do I mean by that? I mean, lean means the learning organization that plans, executes, and learns iteratively from the bottom up, increasing value and reducing waste every day, instead of the very mechanistic command and control style mass production ideas that infect so many Western companies, even today. Lean is simple, but delivering simplicity in complexity is difficult. So don't think that if you go down the route of, we're going to be lean, that you're going to have a really easy time of it. That's just not how it's going to be. But you're absolutely right in the sense of that iterative learning organization.
Well, I think something else that's really important is to differentiate in terms of perception of time between deadlines and durations. Can you dig into that a little?
Yes. So in a mechanistic organization, you'll be given a deadline. You've got to do this by 3 months, particularly in sales. I mean, it's every quarter, quarter review, first half and second half, and then the annual review. And because we have a command and control financial system that says we have to go back to shareholders every 3 months, and we have to report earnings, particularly in the US. We have to report earnings, and so we have to be, it's short term all the time. A lean organization, and look, I'm going to talk about Toyota a lot because they are the reference material for everything lean. They are the world's,
and they're very good at it.
They are very good at it. They're the world's best manufacturer for a reason, and there's a reason that everybody looks to Toyota. Toyota don't do that. Toyota are not going to push something. They're not going to try to push something onto the market because they have a short-term financial objective to meet. They're going to rely on the market to pull products through the value stream. They want to pull value. They want the customer to pull value through the value chain. Most people would probably be surprised to learn that in Japan, Toyota sell their cars door to door. They don't have dealerships. You have a Toyota.
No idea.
Yeah, and because Japan has it's a very high trust homogenous society, and it has very detailed records on everybody. So they know when everybody's birthdays are. So they also know when they become of age to drive a car. And so you get a little knock on your door, and a Toyota representative will be there, and he'll talk to you, what kind of, can we interest you in a car? We know you're coming ready to buy one, and what kind of car would you like? What can we do for you? Very, very, very specific. Yeah, there you go. There's a revelation for you.
Oh, you've made my day. That is beautiful.
So they are pulling. They're pulling value through the value chain. They are not pushing it onto a market.
So, if any of you have not read Bob Messler's book, Demand Side Sales, I cannot begin to recommend it highly enough. What we need to understand is that lean and systems and processes and frameworks and checklists are there to empower human beings to meet their fullest potential. And so let's talk about the values of lean, because they then speak to the next point.
Okay, so what you've just said there, people. It's not about the tools. It is not about some fancy control board or some control chart. It's not about Andon or Kanban cards or A3s or any of these other lean tools or the money. It's putting people at the center of everything. So I'm a lean nerd, all right? So I've read a lot of the literature going back to the father of lean, a Toyota executive called Cauchi and Matt. And one of the problems that most people don't read the literature. So a lot of people have heard of lean. Some people know about the Toyota production system. A few people have heard of Cauchi and then very, very few nerds like me have actually read his work. So you have a vague and false understanding of lean as being about better, faster, cheaper. We're going to be better, faster, cheaper. If that's the basis of your rollout of lean in either in manufacturing, or logistics, or lean agile software development, or banking, or healthcare, or anywhere else, you're going to fail. I'll just tell you right now, you are going to fail if you go to your nearest mirror, if you're in this kind of transformation, look in the mirror and say, why did we get into this? And if it was because some consultant came in and said, you're going to save a ton of money, you're done. You've finished. You haven't understood. Because what is at the center of lean is people. Continuous improvement based on respect for your people, your customer, the natural resources that you have. Because remember, Japan doesn't have a lot of natural resources, so we tend to be very respectful of them. And also ground on a deep, deep humility across the organization that everybody's wrong most of the time. Taiichi only said most people are wrong 70% of the time. Even the smartest of us are probably wrong 50% of the time. We have to understand that we like determinism. We like to think we know the answer. Oh, I know why that process is failing, or I know why that sales target wasn't met, or I know what that customer's thinking. We probably don't. And we need to go to the Gemba, as Taiichi said, go to the Gemba, go to the place where the work is done and figure it out. Don't bring me data. What do I mean by data? Don't bring me measurements of this machine is producing this many widgets at this at this rate, at this takt time. And for some reason, the production has reduced by 20% over the last week. That's a point to start a scientific experiment, but don't give me that. Give me the information of why that is happening. Imagine a machine is producing parts at a certain speed, a certain takt, and it's for some reason that we're not quite really sure. It's got slower and slower and slower. Well, the only way to know why that is happening is to go and look at the machine and really deeply understand. And when I say deeply understand, I'm going to give you an example. So Taiichi, when he was training his team leaders, he had a technique that's now used in lean called stand in the circle. A lot of people don't know where it comes from. It comes from Ono. He would go out onto the shop floor. He would take a piece of chalk and he would chalk a big circle on the shop floor, and he would say to his team leaders, stand in that circle and watch the process and see what's happening. Some of them would stand there for 8 hours watching what was going on. Now you're going to be able to come back to Ono with facts, not just data points of, this machine is producing at this rate, or that workstation has that percentage scrap rate or anything like that. Now you're going to be able to tell them why. And then that's when you're going to start wiring the process, which is another Another lean idea that says you will get to any root cause of any problem, asking why no more than 5 times. So people are absolutely essential. That kind of deep understanding that machines can't give you. And I'll give you another example. Elon Musk ironically took over a manufacturing facility called NUMMI in California, which came from, it was a joint venture between Toyota and General Motors. The idea was Toyota was going to teach General Motors how to produce cars in a lean manner. Anyway, Elon Musk bought this site for Tesla, and he had this great idea for producing cars in a totally automated manner. There would just be robots throwing these things together and shoving them out the door. And it was a disaster. Because once you start doing that, you've got these machines doing just completely automated, running all over the place. Not totally automated, but there is some kind of self-correction in that. But there were no humans in there controlling the process. And in the end, they shut the entire plant down, and they were manufacturing Tesla cars in tents in the car park with people. And he tweeted, "People are underrated." Because you simply cannot get away from the idea that people should be at the center of everything in the manufacturing process. And the idea is that, if we adopt lean, we're going to be able to reduce our headcount. Well, that's not a great message to deliver to your team. So some consultant comes in and says to your team, if you do this, if you adopt this lean operating model, we're going to be able to save you a load of money. And your team sit there thinking, oh, great, I'm going to basically make myself redundant. Now, Toyota has never, ever made a permanent member of staff redundant. Ever. They have reduced their force. They've reduced their force by reducing contingent workers. They have done that. And they have even, during the global financial crisis, they have reduced pay across the board for everybody from the plant manager down. But they have never unilaterally fired anybody because they didn't need them anymore. It takes decades to build that kind of trust. And if you think that you're going to be able to do it in a couple of months, but by giving the people some promises, oh no, you're not going to lose your job. That's not how human beings work. And I don't, like the shotgun in the face moment, if that is your idea, I don't think you really understand people. And I certainly don't think you understand how to motivate people.
And therein lies part of the problem, because people are motivated by their own reasons. And most managers believe that they have some magical capability of doing something that no one can do, which is motivate another human being. What would happen if privately run businesses stopped operating on quarterly reporting cycles and started to focus instead on achieving the job to be done, the outcome, over a 2-year period?
Mm-hmm. So Toyota manage by target conditions. They don't manage by outcomes. So
define target conditions and how they operate.
So target conditions would be, we are not going to measure how many cars we sold in the previous quarter. That's not the measure of success for us. The measure of success would be something else, like we needed to have a certain percentage. We need to have had a certain percentage of waste in a particular plant reduced by a certain percentage. That's our target condition, because we are not bothered on ROI. We're not bothered about ROI measures, because we know that the accountants obviously are, they're the management accountants, but we are not concerned with that as our motivation, because it's not aligned with our precepts. So let me just go through the Toyota precepts very quickly, because then you'll see what I mean. So the Toyota precepts are: 1, be contributive to the development and welfare of the country, that's Japan, by working together, regardless of position, in faithfully fulfilling your duties. Be ahead of the times through endless creativity, inquisitiveness, and pursuit of improvement. Be practical and avoid frivolity. Be kind and generous. Strive to develop a warm, home-like atmosphere, and be reverent and show gratitude for things great and small in thought and deed. They're Toyota's precepts. Now, I know that a lot of companies can say, these are our operating principles, this is what we do, but I can't think of another company that embodies their precepts better than Toyota does.
They live that, they recruit for that, they get promoted for that, they get rewarded for that, they get recognized for that. Yeah. And they elevate people who embody those qualities. So
I worked for a company, and I won't name them, but people who've worked for this company will know who it is, because I'm going to say there was a quality policy, and there were 3 points. And if you could recite this when, shortly after you'd joined the company, to one of the executives walking in the corridor who asked you, what's our quality policy? It was develop innovative system solutions and services, honor our agreements, and earn a fair profit for our shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
Toyota doesn't say anything about earning profits. It talks about being contributive, being practical, avoiding frivolity, be kind and generous, all these things. It's a mindset difference, and lean is a cultural difference. It's not about It's not about the tools. It's about putting people at the center and a cultural shift. You're not going to solve your problems by deploying a load of lean tools. I'll give you an example. A3s. A3s are a tool used in Toyota to coach people. It's a A3 piece of paper. In the UK, we know what that is, but for Americans, it's kind of, imagine twice the size of a letter-sized piece of paper.
Flip chart.
Yeah, flip chart paper. And in that, it's got a series of stages on it that you go through to start with, kind of defining the problem, the current conditions, the target conditions that we're aiming for. So the summary of the observations of the current state, and then target conditions, proposals, plans, key points, and then there's reflections at the end. A3s are used as a coaching tool, and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth all the time between mentor and mentee as it's updated, reiterated, changed, updated, amended with new data, new information, new facts as we go through the process.
It's a living, working, operating.
It is a living, working document, and it is used so that the mentor can see how the mentee is thinking and how they're solving problems. And the problem statement initially will be deliberately vague, just to see how they tackle it. And so they'll be coached and taught all the way through it. And the mentor doesn't direct almost ever. There might be an occasion where you probably should go and look over there, but generally the mentor stays back from what the mentee is doing and just kind of guides.
A coach, a trainer, a mentor, their job is to empower the other person to do at least 80%. And with the 20% they can't do, they intervene just enough so that they can put the pieces together and make up the rest and complete, tie the ends of the knot together.
Absolutely. And the last thing the coach should do or the mentor should do is come along with preconceived ideas about, oh, this is actually what you need to do. Sometimes you might be right, but probably you're going to be wrong, and you have to leave that. But the problem with A3s is that Western kind of command and control mechanistic organizations will see those things. That's a great reporting tool. Oh, tell us how we got through that problem, and what ROI we've made, and we can put that in our quarterly reports. That's not what an A3 is for. An A3 is not a reporting tool, and I've seen them being used as reporting tools, and it doesn't work. And people who are stuck with them end up thinking, why are we doing this? But it would be a lot easier if I just got to the end of this mini project and just told them how much I've saved, rather than going through all this stuff. And that was never the intent with which A3s are meant to be used. But people see the tools and they think, oh, I'm going to use that. That looks really good. That would be great for my reporting. Makes my reporting a lot easier.
When we were in the green room, you and I talked about the difference between the instrumental and the intrinsic, or the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk to that.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because this is something that actually came up. I've got a lot of books I could recommend people read, but one of them is The Toyota Way. There are lots of books about Toyota, but The Toyota Way is in Toyota's training centers. So if they're using it themselves, that's what I would recommend. So in The Toyota Way, by a guy called Jeffrey Leica, he mentions a study done in 1945 by a social scientist called Carl Dunker. And they had a study where he had a problem-solving exercise for two groups of people. One of them was told that they were going to be rewarded financially on the speed with which they solved the problem. Mm-hmm. The other one, they would not be rewarded, but they were to do it as fast as they could for the benefits of science. This intrinsic reward rather than this extrinsic reward. So the extrinsic is money, intrinsic the benefit of the science. Those who had intrinsic motivations won by a long way, when the task was not very clear and required creative thinking. When you're motivated by money, you tend not to think deeply. When money was included, people rush to the goal and do less deep thinking. Now, my question to you, Marcus, is how might this affect sales? So let me just talk about this a little further. The goal, the particular problem was you were given a small wooden box with a candle in it, and there was some tacks in the box in the wood that you could remove the tacks. And the people who are motivated by money tried to just stick the candle to the objective was to put the candle on the wall. People tried to the motivated by money would light the candle, try to drip wax on the wall, and just stick it to the wall as fast as possible, give the money. And the people who had time to think and just have the most elegant solution, time to create the most elegant solution, finally figured out, well, if we just take those tacks out of the box, we can actually hammer those into the wall and we can mount the candle in the box, and you got a very good result. So I mean, it was a fascinating study, really, really interesting. If you are the real lesson, kind of shotgun in the face thing, is if you are going to be motivated by money to deliver your lean agile operator model, you are probably going to resort to fast thinking, shallow problem solving, rather than slow time thinking with deep problem solving. And you're probably not going to get the results that you want. So if you're in this kind of scenario, go and take a look in the mirror, ask yourself what you're motivated by.
Well, this again is really key in the context of selling. If we are spending our time trying to get salespeople to follow playbooks that were built on ideas that were developed largely before the invention of any form of real science around the brain, behavioral science, neuroscience, behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, heuristics, all these different elements. We've learned a lot. We understand what goes on in the brain when it feels pressure, when it feels threatened, when it feels uncertainty. And yet we systematically create these selling systems that are intended to serve the shareholders and deliver the quarterly result. And in doing that, create massive inherent inefficiencies. If you ask a simple question of managers, how much of your seller's time is actually in front of customers? At the moment, it's tracking it well below 20%.
Mm-hmm.
I've come across people who are saying their reps are between 3 and 5% in front of customers, which means 95% of the time they're not doing the job for which you paid them for, which is empowering customers to make the right decision. They're trying to do their job, but they're unable to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it then begs the question, well, A, is that a satisfying way to do your work? Anonymity, irrelevance, and measurement are three of the biggest signs of a miserable job. And if you feel like you're a cog in the machine, even if you're successful, you're not succeeding because they overassign your quota because they're trying to serve the shareholders, not the customers, not the staff. And you're constantly under pressure and feeling like you're having to work harder to stand still because there is no thinking at the top. Because let's be honest about it, the way they tend to operate is they'll take last year's numbers and they'll add a bit. And last year's numbers were already too much of a stretch, as we can see that only 30% or 40% of salespeople across the board, across all 26 verticals, are on average hitting quota. Which means 70% plus aren't.
Mm-hmm.
That's an indictment on management and leadership. It's not on salespeople.
Absolutely.
I mean, they have a responsibility, but managers have the responsibility for to create the conditions for salespeople to be able to do their best work every day. If you're tolerating letting your salespeople spend 95% of their time talking to gatekeepers, voicemail, dead numbers, wrong numbers, staring at their phone, aggressively praying it will ring, I think you are negligent in your role. Am I unfair?
No, I don't agree with that at all. And I think the problem. Sorry, I don't disagree with you at all. I think. Sorry, I misspoke. I totally agree with that. I think that it comes from again. I mean, I've said it before. I've said it earlier in the episode. We work primarily in an environment with top-down command and control mechanistic organizations saying, as you said, hey, we achieved this last year. We want to achieve this much more this year, some arbitrary number, because we're going to do what we can to push our product onto the market to make that target. And because we want that, it tends, as human beings, we tend to want certainty. We want certainty. We don't like working. Those silly questions. Do you like working? The job interviews. Do you like working with in uncertain environments? Can you handle opaque challenges? I mean, most of us can, but we don't necessarily want to. We want certainty, and we tend to create beliefs even when there is no basis for them. So the management will come and say, we need you to raise, this quarter's got to be 10% higher than the same quarter last year. Now, there's no basis for that. It's just, I was in another organization where the management, the word came down from on high, we're going to double the revenue of this business in 5 years. Why? Well, because we're going to. Okay, fair enough. And you know what? I think they probably achieved it.
But at what price?
But when we create those kind of beliefs and those certainties on no basis, we rush to firm answers that can create horrible collateral effects and externalities.
Excellent. Okay, so this is one of my big bugbears, where you make a decision that seems to be logical at the top without thinking about the consequences and the ripple effect through the value chain. And this is where I'd like to draw people's attention. Um, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Just play with me. Why do we prospect?
Well, probably I'm not in sales, but I would imagine you prospect to qualify customers, to make sure that the future customers are actually qualified to be your customers, because not everybody is.
Okay. Um, that's part of the answer. But in my world, I believe that what we prospect for are paying customers who are ideal, not sort of okay, but they're ideal. They will repeat purchase. They have the potential for expansion purchase, not just upsell and cross sell, but other divisions, alumni, supply chain, customer's customer, family tree, organic sales.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the nature of their values, our values, and a shared purpose, they will probably refer us, and they would hate to be without us, and they will stay with us for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I prospect. Now,
Yeah.
if you are only looking at the element, not the component, not the moving part that that component is part of, or the system and the outcome it serves, then chances are what you're doing is a really good job of making a broken thing work really well badly.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. So surely the most obvious starting point is what is the intended outcome that we intend to experience and live as a result of this transformation? And then we build backwards from there. Wouldn't that just be the most bloody obvious thing to do?
Yep. But again,
why do we start the other way?
Yeah.
Why do we always start from the wrong end of the problem then?
Well, again, it comes back, I said it earlier, and I'll say it again because it's really, really worth it. Bang home. If you're an executive, and I'm talking at least a director in a Fortune 500 or FTSE company, if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, yeah, we're talking about lean agile transformation, and I think that we could save a load of cash, and I could probably increase my bonus, and we could return more value to shareholders, and my stock options will go up, and that's really good for me. That's great. That's fantastic for you. Congratulations. You've obviously worked very hard to be in that position. And seriously, congratulations. I'm not sure that I have the drive that it takes to get to where you need to be. But we do need people who do that. So that's great. But how is that going to affect your individual contributors? Because they probably haven't got stock options, and they probably don't get even bonuses, and what they do are probably pretty small. And they don't really have that motivation. You're coming along telling them, even if you've got the idea that it's not about better, faster, cheaper, and that it's a cultural change that delivers value to the customer based on humility and respect for people. Even if you've got all of that, you've now got to go and sell that. But you probably won't. You're probably just going to tell them this is how it's going to be. You're going to say, well, we're going to do the transformation anyway. And they're now stuck with it. And you've not given them any reason to really trust you or go along with you. And in my experience, I would probably suggest that the way to do it is this. Listen, we recognize as a leadership team, we recognize that we have been disrespectful to you. We have put down these arbitrary targets on you to hit. We've given you a squalid environment. There have been occasions where we have tolerated toxic behavior from people. We've tolerated backstabbing. We've tolerated this department saying that department are completely useless. We've tolerated all this stuff, and it's going to stop. Because part of our lean transformation is we are going to respect our team. We are not going to allow you to work in those kinds of conditions anymore. We want to empower you to improve your own situation. We are not going to disrespect our customers by delivering products that are defective or late. We are not going to disrespect the raw materials that we have and our shareholders who pay for it by scrapping all this stuff and trying to force products onto the market that are not wanted. We're not going to disrespect our salespeople by creating arbitrary sales figures that they must meet, which actually, by the way, just forces us to discount at the end of every quarter. We're not going to do that anymore. We recognize that we don't have the answers. So we are going to, from top to bottom, from the C-suite all the way down to team leaders, we are going to recognize that we don't always have the answer. And from now on, when we ask a question, the answer, I don't know, is perfectly acceptable. And those I don't know answers will propel us onto an improvement program to figure out the answers based on data and, more importantly, facts. Now, if you went to your team with that message, we have been disrespectful to you and we apologize for it, that's a lot more compelling than we're going to save $10 million by adopting this lean agile operating model. It's going to be an absolute, and we're not going to do it very well. It's going to be hellish for you, but we're going to do it anyway.
To be able to do that, one needs an executive who is willing to be vulnerable. And it takes a brave human being to step forward. I mean, they're operating in high stakes environments. Mm-hmm. There's relentless pressure. They've got colossal decisions to make. And given that there's always someone looking for them to fail and the consequences of getting it wrong, there's pretty much zero margin for error. Mm-hmm. So what they really want to be able to do is make the right decision. Now, they're sharp, they're ambitious, they're fed up with the quick fixes and the empty promises that they get from the big consulting houses and all that stuff. And what they're really trying to do is work out how to get past the grime and the grind and get to understand what's really going on so that they can take good decisions. I mean, listening to you, you've obviously lived through it. You've been the victim of bad decisions.
Yes.
You've probably also been the accomplice because you've perpetrated them, because where you've worked, there is no doubt that you've been on projects that someone else has sold. You've been a warm body with a suitcase and you turn up and you do your job. But that isn't getting the best out of human beings. And I look at the churn within those big consultancies, and the people who stay are often very, very damaged and burnt by the time they leave. Mm-hmm. And when they do leave, they're more often than not tarnished by that experience if they have any humanity or compassion. The ones who aren't are typically the ones who are motivated by money, power, and conspicuous success, the extrinsic. Given the trading conditions we're going into, I'm pretty sure that most customers will be exceptionally nervous of that style of consulting. What advice would you give to somebody who's considering a transformation program? And what are the red flag indicators that tell you that the intent of the consultant is to sell them something instead of deliver the outcome intended?
Well, that's a really great question. Just to go back quickly to, I have been accomplice. Yeah, absolutely, I have. Now, and I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to, I describe myself as a lean nerd earlier. It's true. I'm okay saying that about myself. To have read the material and understand what this was originally built on, and then the Chinese whispers as it's moved around the world, and you end up where you are now, and to think that that's not what we should really be doing. So let me, before I answer your question, let me just give you one more example. So we worked on a project where we were value stream mapping a pretty complex process. It's a very, very complex building process. And we spent 2.5, 3 days going through this process from start to finish. We didn't touch the business development end, which was a big problem. But, I'm not in charge. It's not my decision, because all the problems normally start at the front end, at business development and sales. That's where a lot of the problems start, because the salespeople don't necessarily ask the right questions for the operational team down the road. They have to deliver. And you know all about this, so I'm not going to labor the point. And we came up with a huge list of things that we can do. Now, that's not necessarily the right approach, because I think it worked in this case. I think it was the right approach in this case, but it's not necessarily always the right approach, because making long lists of things, it kind of makes you feel intelligent. Oh, look at all these things that we could do. And then you Pareto chart it and you find out, 80% are coming from 8% of our problems coming from this 20%, so we're going to fix that here. Now, a Toyota sensei would look at that and say, okay, so you're just happy to ship the other 80% of the problems to the customer, are you? That's how they would approach it. That's a good question. I think about it. I understand that we have to prioritize, and I understand why we do it. But yeah, I've been involved in projects where I kind of know how it was originally meant to be done and what the original intent, and you end up working for an organization that is trying to work lean in a very command and control kind of sense. So, what would I say to somebody who's spoken to a consultant? Don't get bamboozled by the number that they say they can save you. let's say you're working for a big, a big company, and they say, oh, well, if you transformed your software development, or if you transformed your logistics and it all went lean, you could save £20 million or $20 million over the next, 5 years. Let me be absolutely crystal clear. They have no idea how much money they can save you, because the only way you can figure that out is by doing the experiments and solving the problems for yourself. They can say, well, we benchmarked you against this company, and this company saved that much when they did a lean agile. Yeah, well, that's great, but that's not you. Just because you copy something from somebody else. Let's say you copy a practice from somebody else, and you say, oh, that's a good idea, I'm going to copy it. That doesn't mean that you know why they did it that way. It doesn't even mean that you can do it. It doesn't mean that you have the capability to do it. Maybe it's a very complex process or a very complex practice. Copying it doesn't make you any better. So if a consultant comes along and says, we can save you this amount of money, no, they don't know that. They don't know that. They can, and it's an absolute huge red flag to you if they say, we can save you this amount of money, and they never talk to you about, but this is going to require a cultural change from the top, right from the chief executive all the way down. And you're going to have to get out of this idea of saving, rescuing when you should be coaching. And you're going to have to abandon this kind of deterministic command and control mindset and adopt the scientific method. If they don't mention any of these things and they just give you this number, like, we benchmark you, and if you adopt this lean agile operating model, you can save all this money. Run. Or do what Anna says. Show me how.
Yep.
Show me how. Show me how we could do that. But they're never going to do that, because that is not what a big four consultancy does. They don't show you how. They just say, you could do this. And then when it's time to deliver, you can't see them for dust.
I remember years ago, I went to see the managing partner of one of the big four. And I asked him what his ideal customer was. And he got up, closed the door. I thought, oh, something's up here. And then he went conspiratorially leaning across the desk. And he said, well, that's easy. A new chief exec got a hostile board, brings us in. We write 1,000-page report at £1,000 a page. Now, bear in mind, this was 1996. So that's gone up by about £5,000 per page. So we write 1,000-page report for £1,000 a page. And he says, McKinsey told us to do it. Then he pops it on the shelf and it gathers dust until the next time. What I find fascinating is that there was an article written in 1994 that was reprinted in 2014 and again in 2024 about how archaic and unhelpful bringing consultants in is. Mm-hmm. And it was reprinted verbatim, and nothing has changed. So this then begs the question: why? There must be a reason.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you why. In the case, in what I observed, in one of the cases that I've observed, the CFO was unconvinced that he was getting value from his technology department, from his IT department. I just don't get value for money. They just seem expensive.
They're a cost center.
They're a cost center. And that brings that. I mean, I could go there and talk about value add, business and value add if you really want, but they're a cost center. And I think that they're too costly. So I'm going to phone up my friends at McKinsey, and they're going to come in, or PwC, or KPMG, or EY. I don't need to drag these names through the mud, but they are, we all know.
It's their business model.
Deloitte. We all know who the big four or big five are. So we all know who they are. So I'm going to phone up my friend at XYZ consulting firm, and they're going to come in and they're going to give me a report. They're going to benchmark me against other people who they're not going to tell me who they are, and they're just going to say, you have to kind of take our word for it. And part of that is, you could get rid of all this technical debt that would save you a lot of money, and you could do this, that, and the other, and you could adopt a lean agile operating for your software development, and that would save you a ton of money because everybody else is doing it. It's the new cool thing to do. Mm-hmm. And the CFO is now satisfied that this consulting firm have given them all the answers that he needs, and he can turn around to the CIO and he can say, here you go, that's what you need to do. And by the way, I've got to support the boss as well. And that's why it happens.
Absolutely. Because the people at the top get sold and they don't think about the consequences of the bad decision. This is why a lot of my work is really focused on looking for the single points of failure. And they normally are created by one bad decision. A great example in my world is the decision to throw more money at marketing to put more stuff in at the top of the funnel. Mm-hmm. And the objective then becomes to fill the top of the funnel with the volume of leads. But what they do is they then attract people from the TAM, the total addressable market, people who may somehow be a fit, possibly, and still have a pulse. And that is their qualification criteria, which then requires marketing to do some qualification, then the business development team to do some qualification, then sales to do some qualification. And then if a false positive happens, then you start incurring some really serious costs. In a FTSE 350 or Fortune 500 company doing an enterprise sale, any pursuit, win or lose, will probably start costing around 40, 50K, with the time involved in prepping, planning, internal, external, and so on. When you follow through all the way to the end, and you then get told that we can't buy from you because, and it's a condition you could have known about at the beginning, that's a very expensive pursuit. And those run into the millions, tens of millions, and even hundreds of millions when you're talking about a 10-year government outsourcing deal. But the salespeople don't care about that because their compensation plan is geared towards making the sale, not the sustainability of the business. And as a result, they then make a sale to someone they shouldn't. That then creates a disappointment in expectation versus first use. That opens a bunch of tickets, and we're just waiting for them to churn while they cost us a lot of money in the process.
Absolutely.
What if we never started that entire cascade of shit in the first place?
Yeah, because in lead times you created not necessarily a defect, but it is kind of, but selling the product to the wrong customer is kind of a defect.
It's definitely a defect. If you should not be selling it to them, it is mis-selling.
Okay, all right. If they're kind of just on the edge and you manage to ram it down. I mean, we've all bought things that we think, oh, why the hell did I buy that? That was a stupid thing to do. That was a waste of money. I shouldn't have bought that thing. So yeah, you can definitely see that. But
how is that being respectful to your customer, out of curiosity?
Oh, well, it's absolutely not.
There you go. So it's cut and dry. The decision is already made. You do not sell to people who are not in your ideal customer profile. Your ideal customer means they must be ideal, not sort of ideal, not almost ideal, but fucking ideal. If they are not a prospect, and they should be disqualified immediately, and you should save yourself and them the wasted effort.
I like to think of that kind of thing as a concert in the summer, an adult concert in the summer where there's an ice cream van there. Yeah. There's a queue of people waiting at the ice cream van. There's thousands of people there, and that's your total addressable market, and most of them are walking past. But the people who really want ice cream, so people who are really customers, are dedicated enough to line up in the queue.
They volunteer.
And wait for it.
Yeah, they volunteer. And this is the point. You can design your go-to-market value chain in order to attract only ideal customers, so that over a 2-year period, every one of your salespeople within 6 months of hiring will be at full ramp and at or ahead of quota at the start of every sales period, by design.
And the other thing that you need to think about if you have effectively generated a defect is the opportunity cost if you could have sold to a dedicated customer. Now, exactly. I want to mention something on opportunity cost because I do listen to your, I'm not just a guest, I do listen to your podcast, Marcus, and you have talked about buyers filtering for risk first, then opportunity cost, and then values way down the list. True, I agree. Taiichi Ohno would disagree with the way we look at opportunity cost. If we are choosing between, let's say in Taiichi's case, choosing between making that model or making another model of car. Because if you're making a model of car and it's selling and it's profitable, that's not an opportunity cost. You're still making money. You may have made more money over there, but you don't know because you haven't had the chance to experiment with it and prove it. So he looked at opportunity cost in a slightly different way. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm very curious to see how he thinks of it. But I think the mistake we make is we ascribe the value to the output, not the outcome. And customers rent outcomes. They don't buy product. They hire an outcome for as long as it's contextually appropriate and fit for purpose. No longer, no shorter. And if we are not adapting with the customer, then we're going to be outsold by someone who's meeting the customer where they are or where they are going to be. And this is why the Toyota principles are so key. Because I think the real opportunity cost is in the value that you could bring to the customer or the value that you could bring to your employee or partner, because that feeds the output, the supply side metric, far better and more reliably than any attempt to try and control those outputs.
Yeah, and control them via hammering your people, which is what a
And
lot of
burning them out.
organizations do. Yeah, so there's another saying at Toyota, which is what is preventing the operators from performing according to the standard? So, because there are standards established for everything. And by that, Toyota is hard on the process, not hard on the people. Toyota will expect their members and their team leaders and plant managers to go and fix problems. But their default position is not like, where do we apportion blame?
Yeah.
Who can we blame shift to this time? And who is going to sweep that problem under the carpet to make themselves look good, flex their organizational power, and get promoted? It's always, no, we're going to be hard on the process first of all, and then we'll look at what people do.
Fantastic. 100% agree. So now then this speaks to the question of when one is considering a new hire, if you are serious about implementing this type of culture, what is it we are not looking for in a human being? Let's start with that.
What are we not looking for? We are not looking for, I don't know, again, I need to be completely clear. I've never worked for Toyota. I'm not a Toyota sensei. I don't know how they hire. We are looking for people who have an innate interest in solving problems. I would suggest that would be an obvious one. We are looking for people who have, some degree of motivation. I've read a lot of books and watched a lot of videos about Toyota. Actually, Toyota in the UK at Derby, and one of the group managers there said, "Not everybody survives at Toyota. It's a hard environment to work in. Manufacturing cars is a busy, dirty, noisy environment, and it's not for everybody. But if it's for you, then you can progress up through the business. So we are looking for people who are open and honest. They're going to thrive in a very, very accountable environment. So we've all worked for people that I'm sure we've all worked for people who, for want of a better words, have maybe a high trait of psychopathy. I think we can all think of somebody that we've worked with who has very, very little empathy, very, very driven, very, very, me.
Read Snakes in Suits by Robert Bibiak and Bob Hare. And
Yep.
what their findings was that death row inmates have 3% clinical psychopathy, whereas the American boardroom, and bear in mind this was written 20 years ago, so it's worse now, the American boardroom has 5% of the population in corporate America is made up of clinical psychopaths.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised by that. So you are not hiring for those kinds of people because you need people who can be accountable. The only way you can filter that kind of personality trait out of your business, again, I would recommend another book, Taming Toxic People by David Gillespie is an excellent book.
Very good book.
So you've got to filter out those kinds of people because you need total accountability. And frankly, people with that character trait would never ever survive in Toyota anyway, because Toyota tend to train and reward long-serving members of staff. So you might work in different parts of Toyota. You might move from one plant to the other, one department to another, out of plant into services maybe, but throughout Toyota there is a culture of continuous improvement, and you can't do that and do all of the scientific method testing if you've got people there who are trying to sweep things under the rug and pull and strong on people and all the rest. So that would be a very clear idea. But I think in the culture of Toyota probably self-selects out a lot of people at the junior level when they're working in the plant. If you don't,
in the recruitment stage as well, I'd be very surprised if people make it through the recruitment process.
Well, I would recommend. I would just suggest to you that maybe Toyota in Derby, the Toyota plant in Derby in the UK, have a Toyota Motor Manufacturing Training Centre, and you might want to get in touch with them and have a podcast with them because they could give you the real inside scoop on Toyota. I can only talk about Toyota theoretically and from what I've read and studied about them, but they would be able to tell you more about how they do their recruitment in Derbyshire.
You've got a golden ticket, and you can go back and you can whisper in the ear of the idiot Matt, age 23, immortal, invincible, and knew everything.
Yeah.
What one piece of heartfelt advice would you have given young Matt that undoubtedly he'd have had to ignore until he got enough scar tissue?
Oh yeah, this is going to be a controversial one. I thought that you were going to ask this question because obviously you've asked it to previous guests. I would tell him at 23 years in university, I would tell him to finish your degree and then go and get a plumbing apprenticeship, be a plumber or an electrician, and learn more about lean. Because you have a lot. It will give you a lot more freedom, a lot more job satisfaction. I forget who it is, but there's a saying that those who work with their heads need to recreate with their hands. I love doing things with my hands. I like woodworking. I like doing jobs around the house because I spend so much time in front of computers, PowerPoint presentations, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents. I find working with my hands much more rewarding, and I think I would have probably enjoyed being a plumber electrician a little more. But definitely learn lean, because you can apply those lean principles anywhere and in any industry that you're working in. And there's not a one size fits all. There's definitely a wrong way to do things, but there's no one right way to do things.
And again, we have to adapt to context, and we have to take perception into account.
Mhm.
All decisions, 100%, are driven by emotion, which
Yep.
is defined by how we respond or react to the triggering event, and how we then choose to interpret that in terms of whether we're a victim of it or whether we have agency. And the difference, this is one of the really interesting things about change. We have gone through constant change since being a fetus,
Mhm.
and we haven't complained much about it. What baffles me is that we spend so much of our life going through change. We don't even fear it. What we fear is the uncertainty that goes with it.
Mhm.
Now, what I love about the whole lean process, and in my world, when I work on transformation in the sales operation, it's just a starting point. So
Yep.
we clearly define what the job to be done is, the mission,
Mhm.
the what. Then we work out what the purpose is, how we want to accomplish it. In my
Mhm.
world, done ethically is critical.
Yep.
Do so in a sustainable way that people want to come to work with a skip in their step and they look forward to it and they give massive discretionary effort. In the UK, we have 90% of the working population is not highly engaged, which means that they are mildly engaged, not engaged, or actively disengaged.
Yep.
90% of all the employees in the United Kingdom. That's not a good look if you're a manager or a leader. Now, couple that with the fact that you can plan all this stuff. So you do mission purpose, then you work out your swim lanes. What are the 3 to 5 big, hairy ass things that will contribute to that outcome?
Mhm.
Put the people who are closest to the outcome or creating the problem in charge. We work in 90-day sprints in each swim lane. Each swim lane is broken down into monthly milestones, and every monthly milestone is broken down into individual personal experiments of the people who are responsible for that piece.
Mhm.
So if you fuck up, it doesn't matter. It's a
No.
week. You can bury your dead. No one needs to know. And then you move on. But if it works, you add it to the system. And so you're hard on the system. Well, apply these principles to your go to market. And instead of looking at the go to market, think of this question: how do we attract repeat, referral, expansion customers for life?
Mhm.
And then build your system around that outcome.
Yeah, I think that the one of the kind of closing images I'd like to leave people with about lean is, imagine you're going for a walk at night with a torch or a flashlight if you're ever here in Florida. Your torch can only see so far ahead. And then when you move to the limit of where you could see, now you can see a little bit more. And then when you move to that limit, you can see a little bit more. That's how we manage in lean. The opposite is assuming that we are going for a walk in the daylight and we can see everything for miles. And that's, I mean, if after all of your experience as in your career in whatever field that you're in, you still believe that, I don't really know what to say for you. We have to manage little bites at a time, little things at a time. And again, I'll just leave you with one comment. There was well, two cases. One, both of Toyota Sensei, which are Toyota's kind of senior consultants who provide consulting to external customers, went to a production line for another car company, to take a look around and give his advice. And the managing director proudly proclaimed, "This production line never stops; just keeps on going."
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese guy kind of rolled his eyes and said, "Oh, it must all be perfect." to to the Japanese, the lean way of thinking, production lines should stop because there are always problems to fix, and if it never stops, it's either perfect or terrible. And the final thing I would like to say, at least on this episode, because there's a lot more material we could cover in future episodes if you want to do them, Marcus, is another Japanese sensei went to another plant, and It was a very good plan. They deployed lean, did it really well, and they had the whole factory tour and the shop floor tour, and shown all these wonderful things and tools and techniques and all these wonderful motivated stuff. And at the end of the tour, the MD turns around to the sensei and says, "So, are we world class?" And the sensei says, "I don't know. I wasn't here yesterday." The definition of world class is to improve every single day. And yeah, I mean, just like cutting down. But then, if you're working lean, you've got the humility to recognize that. Oh yeah.
Well, again, we don't have time to do it now, but if you've been listening to this, think about how you can change by adopting what Matt said and apologizing for the stuff that you've inflicted on your people. So, on that happy note, let's part. Matt, how can people get hold of you?
People find me on LinkedIn. Marcus, I'll send you my profile photo from LinkedIn, so make sure you go find the right Matt Gaskin. But it's Matt Gaskin, reaching for operational excellence on LinkedIn. Like I said, independent consultant now. So if people want to get in touch with me, I want me to come and have a chat with you. Where I can work in the UK or the US, I live in Florida, but obviously I'm a Brit. So please get in touch, and I'd be happy just to make contact with people who just want to talk about lean and nerd out on that kind of stuff.
Excellent, Matt Gaskin. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.